At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES. You're listening to the SNES podcast with your host, Soul Blazer.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Super NES podcast, episode number 195. I am Greg. He is Joe.
Hello.
As always, we are your faithful co-hosts. Coming to you this time with some games to follow up a game that we recently covered on the podcast. Recently, I don't have the episode number off the top of my head. Sorry, bad podcaster. It was recent. We covered the Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse, which is one of the great Capcom Disney games that they did.
It's episode 189.
189. Yes, thank you. So, so we decided in this episode to cover the two sequels to that game. And because those games are so similar to the first game, we decided just to put both games as one episode. Because the games are mostly the same, but there are some differences between them, which would kind of, which I imagine we'll be spending most of our time here focusing on. So, anyway, so a couple notes here. So a couple notes to get started here. First of all, for those of you who did not listen to the Magical Quest or Mickey Mouse episode, or just need a quick refresher, the game's your typical side-scrolling action platformer game, which was developed by Capcom, which was Capcom had the license to produce Disney games in those time periods. They did a lot of great games. Almost all the Capcom Disney games are great. With very few exceptions, but so you play in that game is Mickey Mouse trying to rescue your friends like Pete. The gimmicks of the game were that Mickey could could find different outfits to change his look, and therefore his powers as the game went on. There were coins you could find to buy items. There also was a heart meter for your hit points, and you also could find special hearts to expand the health meter. The games also featured a difficulty adjustable level, easy, normal, hard, and most games also had so a lot of games also had mini games of some sort. And all three games originally came out on the Super NES, and all three games were later re-released and ported over to the GBA as well too. So, in broad strokes, that's the game. So the two follow-up games are also follow the same formula, which is why we decided to cover both games as one episode. So, naming, however, also gets a bit confusing because it's the games had one name when they got released. There was another name that was the game's popularly known by, and then the game also got renamed when it came up with the GBA. So it gets a bit confusing. So take the first game we're covering, for example. This game was released. This game was released back then as the Great Circus Mystery starring Mickey and Minnie. The game got re-released on GBA later on as Disney's Magical Quest 2 starring Mickey and Minnie. So the game's often commonly referred to, just to make life easier for everybody, as Disney's Magical Quest 2 or just Magical Quest 2 these days. So if you're searching for the game on eBay or YouTube or whatever, you might try those words. Probably give you the biggest results. Mm-hmm. So this game did come out. This game did come out for Genesis, unlike the previous game, which had been planned for Genesis but never actually came out. I checked out the Genesis port briefly. It's pretty much the same game. It just has the same slight differences of graphics and music that you would expect for a Super NES / Genesis difference. Because the game doesn't use a lot of buttons, however, it also maps very well, like Genesis controller. That was pretty much the only one downside about well, in my mind, I'm sure Joe has different downside in mind, but because the Super NES controller had 6 buttons compared to Genesis default 3, some games didn't map very well over like that reason, because they had to remap the controls and whatnot and kind of make it. Which made the game a bit more clunky on the Genesis to play. Luckily, this game does not suffer that problem.
Yeah, and the games that were specifically designed for the Genesis, some like Quackshot, works fantastic with the controller, because it's like B is your jump button, and then A will give you your shoot, and then C can cycle through the weapons. So there are some games that were designed with the Genesis in mind, and then there's games like this which were clearly made for the Super Nintendo and then ported over to the Genesis.
Right, exactly. So I know you were saying before, also, Joe, that you really didn't care for the sound, the sound of music. I feel like in Genesis games as well too, but
yeah, especially later Genesis games, they used the GEMS engine, and it was made. The GEMS engine was designed to make it easier for developers to be able to make the music for the system very easy. And it did. It made it very easy. And, some people were able to use it and actually make decent music. Others, that's where you get the cat sounds that people like to complain about with the Genesis. And I'm with them. I think it's like Road Rash 3 is like one of the worst offenders. It just sounds like dying cats from like point A to point B. But the gameplay is great. You just got to play it on mute.
Right. So this game, as I said before, is a sequel. It's not really shovelware. People may look at this game and just say like they cranked out the door super fast. There actually was a pretty good amount of time between the games, because the first game came out. I came out originally like in November of 1992. This game got released in October of 1994. So it was almost like 2 years later that this game came out. So it doesn't look like it was a rushed job, despite the game being so similar to the first game and how it like looks and plays. But this game also got worldwide released. North America got it first, October 1994. Japan followed the following month. Europe got it in 1995. Genesis version has the same release system. So there's also again a very Disney-ish story to go with this game, but like the first game, the story is mostly told in the opening cutscenes. There are occasional boxes of dialogue as you go through the game every now and then, but being an action platformer, it's not like a very heavy story-based game. You did such a good job the first time around, Joe. Like you want to take, you want to take a stab trying to describe the very Disney-ish story like this game.
Yeah. So in the first game, Pluto goes missing. Pete stole him. You got to go rescue him, right? All right. So this one is actually really ups the ante, because they show up at the circus and everybody's gone. Pete wasn't happy with just Pluto. He took everybody. So it's just Minnie and Mickey out to save the world. And you'll notice when we finally talk about the third game that this is a theme that they continue with.
Yes.
I mean, it's very basic. You're going through the levels. You're leading to Pete. Pete changes his... I can't remember what he was in the first game now, but he's basically...
he was a wizard.
There we go. He was a wizard in the first one. He's a baron in this one. And then we'll eventually talk about how he became king in the third game. So, like, Pete is going on quite the journey. And as far as character growth, like, Pete has got the best character growth in this entire series, I have to admit.
Well, he was also emperor in the first game, too. So, maybe... So, he's trying to get that glory back, I guess. But
Right.
But, and to be fair... Mickey and Minnie find out what happened because of Goofy. Goofy's the only one that wasn't taken, but Goofy's shell shocked, so he's not very much. Like much help. if you're looking to play Goof in a game, go play a Goof Troop instead. But
Yes, absolutely.
He's useless in this one. But so we just. Like I mentioned before, that despite the games being so similar, there are some important differences. One of the big differences, there's just this game that you can actually you can actually choose to play as either Mickey or Minnie. It's only cosmetic. That doesn't affect the gameplay like in any way. Unfortunately, the next game will improve upon that, thank God. But in this game, even though they play the same, it is cool. You're able to pick your character, so I will give Capcom credit for that. So, one big difference is if you have somebody play one big difference in this game, is if you have somebody to play the game with. In the first game, 2 players could play the game, but they had to take turns. In this game, it's cooperative gameplay, which really adds a whole new element of gameplay to the game.
Yeah.
And then finally, the biggest change is the game has a password feature in it. So you are able to pick your game up where you left off if you want to. So, which is great for kids, because even though this game is similar, as I said, to the first game, it was mostly got praised for graphics, and the graphics gameplay got criticized for its easy difficulty and being too short. But the password feature at least allows kids who obviously were a target market like these games.
Right.
The password system at least allows kids to go back to the game easily enough. So I will give them credit for that.
And I just want to build upon that, because those were 2 of the big points that I put down in my notes, was the fact that co-op is huge, that you can do that now, and then the password system, because you didn't have that in the first game. The other thing is, when you die and you still have lives, you respawn right there. It's not like the first game where it would send you to the beginning of the level, and you'd have to work your way through. This time, if you die, you start right there, which is really good for boss battles. Because you can make it through most of the levels, I think, without losing a life, if you have some skill. Some of the bosses are a little tricky, but one thing I noticed with these bosses, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit, but a lot of the bosses kind of feel like Mega Man bosses. I don't know if you agree with me.
Sure, yeah. That makes sense.
It's Capcom.
Capcom DNA.
Right,
so, yeah,
right.
But, yeah.
So, but I thought it was very interesting. When I was fighting some of the monsters, I was just like, oh, okay. I was like, this is cool.
Right. Yeah. So so just like the first game, it's got 4 outfits, 6 stages. So let's go over the outfits. The outfits here real quick. Joe, do you want to start the discussion? With the outfits?
Yeah. So the first outfit you get is he's a sweeper, a street sweeper or something like that. And he's got a vacuum. And the vacuum's cool because it can suck up enemies, but it can also suck up coins.
It's very cute.
And blocks. Yeah. It's Mickey walking around depending on who you're playing as, Mickey or Minnie, but
right.
You're walking around with a vacuum, and it's hilarious. And I love it. This is a great costume. The other costume that you have is the safari outfit.
Yes.
And it's cool that it helps you to be able to climb. I think that helps with a lot of the platforming. This is one of those suits where I'm like, okay, they definitely put this in here because of the kids.
Also allows you to swing with certain blocks as well,
right.
too.
So you can swing from certain blocks. Yeah. You can swing from the tree branches.
Yeah.
So this can be actually very useful. And then the third one is the Western costume. Now, I don't know if you'll agree with me, Greg, but I hated this costume. You bounce on a horse. You're constantly bouncing on a horse. That is one of the things that you have to get used to. And then you got a little gun. And I'm like, should Mickey have a gun? Let's be real. Should Mickey have a gun? Other than that,
it's a pop gun that fires corks. It's loud.
But the reality is that horse is just constantly moving, and you have to...
The horse does take some getting used to, yes.
Yes, yeah. So I hated it because I had to get used to how the suit works. The other thing, now that we've gone over all 3 suits, the biggest issue I had with this game, and I don't know if you'll agree with me, is the having to switch the suits so often. To me, it got to be so tedious. The first couple times, it's cool. The curtain goes up, he does his little change, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, that's cute. But by the 50th time, I'm like, just do it. Just switch. Why do we have to go through this whole thing? But that's just
Yeah,
me.
it definitely was. Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is a choice that kind of featured like style more so like a more substance. But
Yeah.
I do wish it had been changed also a little bit. So I guess the biggest reason I liked the cut. Well, two things that I really liked about the cowboy outfit. One, it was very different and unique.
Yes.
Which yes, the horror does take some getting used to, but also that the Desperado dash ability you can do with it is very powerful. So,
Yeah.
but like one of the bosses, that's critical to use, I think. So, but so that's pretty much the whole game in a nutshell. I mean, like that's just. I mean,
Yeah.
this is why we decided to bundle two games together because it's like I mean, the gameplay differences. Don't get me wrong. The game does play a little bit. The game does play differently enough. That's fun to go through. But really, my recommendation. I don't want to speak for Joe. I think Joe will agree with me. But it's like, if you like the first game, you'll like this game as well too. Because it's like, I think this game's better than the first game because I think because I like the outfits a bit more. And I think I think the overall gameplay and humor in this game is touched up, turned up like a bit. So if the game feels a little, a little bit more polished in the first game, even though it uses the same engine and everything, it still feels like okay, we know it worked the first game, we'll just improve upon it like a little bit, don't break the formula. So so if you like the first
Yep.
game, you'll enjoy this game as well too. I think this game's definitely a little bit better than the first game. It's still funny to go through. It's still cute. Still like, the difficulty is pretty good. I think. I mean, I agree with the reviewers who say the game is like is very short and easy because it is kind of short and easy.
Right.
Like your typical playthrough game is like 45 minutes. Flavor good of the game. So, but there are difficulty settings you can use to adjust things a little bit. So, and like I said before, the game was targeted. The game was specifically targeted. I feel like more toward kids. So, the easy difficulty. So overall, the easy difficulty makes sense to me.
Yep. And I agree with you 100%.
I did not get to play this game in two-player cooperative mode, but I did watch it on YouTube, and it does again look like, and that mode does, and that mode does look like it changes things totally. It's like it's a totally different game playing a cooperative with somebody else. So if you have somebody who plays this game, I highly recommend that as well too, because you'll probably have more fun with it.
Yeah, it definitely looks like it's more fun in co-op mode. I also did not have a chance to play in co-op because my fiance doesn't like to play games. So that was unfortunate. But yeah, that co-op aspect, I still love the idea that, co-op, couch co-op at that.
Yes.
I love couch co-op. It's one thing to play online with people, and it's fun. Don't get me wrong. I play with my son all the time. But to actually have my son there with me and kind of like mess with him while I'm on the couch, that's always better. It's always a better experience.
Right. Also, this game I think kind of got reviewed a little bit harshly. Also, I'll talk about the review scores here in a little bit, but this game, unfortunately, at least in Super NES, had the timing. Had the bad timing coming at almost the same time as almost the same time as another Mickey game, like Mickey Mania. So we'll probably cover here at some point later on. So it's like those two games were compared to each other and they really shouldn't have been because the two games are very different. So I don't know if you played Mickey Mania, Joe, but
Yeah, I have, and I mean there are similarities, but that's Mickey Mania is a totally different.
it is a totally
experience.
different game. Yes. So
Yeah.
but so as I mentioned before, all three games also got re-released later on the GBA. But Disney Interactive in 2003. That also got worldwide release. The GBA version is pretty much a straight port. The only difference being the password system was replaced by a save feature, and the cooperative gameplay mode could be accessed by using GBA link cable. So again, couch play was allowed. So with that feature. So I'm trying to remember. It's been so long since I had a GBA. you usually had to have 2 copies of the game to do that, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So there were very, very few games I think that allowed you to. I think there were very few games that allowed you to play play up like 1 copy of the game. So
Yeah, Nintendo wanted you to buy multiple copies of the game.
yes, so.
Absolutely.
So there really aren't any kind of like cheats or anything like this game. There are so the only secret really to be found is there are 2 hidden 2-ups in the game that you can find. Like various stages too, not just like a 1-up, a 2-up. So definitely. So I won't say here how to how to find them. You can look them. You can explore or find the location yourself later on if you want to. I will say one's in stage 1 and one's in stage 2. So so it is worthwhile grabbing those your first time through the game to help you out because 4-ups are definitely gonna go. You're definitely gonna help you out like to play the game. So did you find either one of them?
Not that I remember.
Okay.
Especially if they're hidden. Sometimes, especially with games like these, like I'm literally just trying to get to the end.
Yeah.
So I don't really explore too much, and because these games aren't really, you're not pre-programmed to be looking for stuff in games like this. That's kind of why I just kind of breeze through. It's not like True Lies.
Right.
Where you could come across like some secret weapon if you happen to break open a crate or something like that.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned before, this game reviewed very similar to the first game. Got mixed to positive reviews. Again, as already mentioned previously, the graphics, humor, and the gameplay were, they're all given a thumbs up. The outfit system, music, also. Music also got pretty positive marks. The music of this game, which touch upon that real quick. The graphics, I'm not even like I mentioned because it's the same engine as the first game. So they're good graphics, but the music in this game, I think I like. I think I also like the music in this game a little bit better than the first game as well too. So again, pretty similar. Same style, similar songs. It's just like something. This just felt a little bit more like jivey to me, I guess. The music of this game. So I can't really put my finger on exactly why, but just felt that way. To give you an example of how varied the review scores were. Famicom Tanisho, which was the big Japanese magazine publisher. Reviewing Super NES games back in the day, in Japan gave the game 26 out of 40, which is like pretty good, good score. Whereas Next Generation only gave the game like 2 out of 5 stars. But to be fair, Next Generation was. Next Generation did cover the Genesis version of the game, but I really didn't see the Genesis version of the game being that different to warrant such a bad score. So, and they could, and again, they were one of several magazines that compared it to Mickey Mania, and it's like, I'm saying before, that's not fair to the game because it's like it's like a very different game than Mickey Mania is. So, overall game rankings, the Super NES version of the game has about like 75% a rating, which I think is like pretty fair. So, but Nintendo Power gave the game 3 out of 5, 5 out of 5 stars. Super Play gave it 73%. So, yeah, that all fits in. Fits in like the average rating. So. Before I mention eBay pricing, Joe, anything else you want to say about this game in particular?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. I think we pretty much covered it. If you like the first game, you should play this one. That's what it comes down to.
So the game sold well. Copies of the game can be found on eBay for like fairly cheap. At least as far as cheap for Super NES games, mind you. But as I mentioned before in the past, Super NES games are kind of in a bubble like right now. So prices are higher than they were several years ago. But still, I think this game can be had for like relatively cheap. So 20 copies are currently listed on eBay as this time searching. 20 copies of the game like recently sold. Cart prices, and these include shipping prices. Carts sold anywhere from like $15 to $44.
Wow. That's I mean, I understand that, games have gone up, but like, geez, when I was playing this on the original hardware, I picked this up at a video game store for a whole whopping $3. And it was with like Madden 1996 and like,
right, yeah.
Like the sports titles, like it was in that bin. And there were quite a few copies of this game in that bin. And it was one of those I was just like, oh, it's a Mickey game. Like, that'll be a fun little platformer. And I picked it up. I knew nothing of it at the time. I didn't own it when it came out for the Genesis. So, that was my first experience with the game. And, geez.
Oh, I've got to
hear that it's gone up that much. I mean, I know the bubble is there. And I'm still waiting for that bubble to burst. But at the same time, like, I think $15 is reasonable, to be honest. It's just, after paying $3 for it, like $15
I know.
expensive.
Super NES Super NES prices were already going up anyway, but the pandemic certainly didn't help things.
Right.
So, but I've got to ask you. But yeah, thank you for mentioning that. So because I totally, he totally spaced it. Like I forgot to ask you. You have previous experience like this game then, but.
Yes. So, almost 8 years ago now, I think.
Okay.
George was nice enough to gift me a Super Nintendo for my birthday.
I remember that, yep.
Because I had never owned the Super Nintendo. And it came with F-Zero and Super Mario World. And, like, within the first 2 weeks, I, like, went crazy and bought a bunch of games for it. And Mickey was one of them because it was $3. No other reason.
Where'd you find it? Like Funko Land?
No, I want to say it was Game Exchange.
Oh, I remember that place. Okay.
Yeah, so if it wasn't Game Exchange, it was a mom and pop shop. That was, at the time, like, those weren't, very common, and you could usually find good deals at those mom and pop shops. So now mom and pop shops are basically like going on eBay. You're just better off going on eBay and paying the shipping.
There's a couple around here still that are pretty good, but yeah, that's pretty much like a sadly, like you're right about that. So, but do you have the game still, or did you sell your Super NES games?
I don't even have the Super Nintendo anymore.
What'd you do with it?
When I was living in New York, I had hard times and ended up having to sell it.
Ah, makes sense. Okay, yep.
But, with emulation the way it is, my Raspberry Pi, having the Super Nintendo Classic and loading all the games on there, like, yes, I miss playing on original hardware, but also, like, there are so many options now, today, that I have a Super Nintendo emulator on just about everything electronic I own. If my refrigerator had one of those cool little touch screens, I'd have a Super Nintendo emulator on that. So, it's just one of those things, like, the hardware's cool, and I love that I had the hardware for the time, but, fell on hard times, had to sell it along with my 3DO.
Nope, I understand totally.
So, my 3DO was a big one for me. Like, I didn't want to sell that, but, I had to, and I got that from George as well, so.
Yes.
But that one I paid for. That wasn't a gift.
I also had a 3DO for several years back in the day, so I understand that. So,
yeah.
But anyway, so prices. Card only. So card only. So it's anywhere $15 to $44. CIB copy so anywhere $60 to $130. And there actually was a steel copy of the game that sold recently too, for a pretty cheap as far as steel prices go, like $181. So.
Wow.
The person got a steal for that game, I think.
Yeah.
But so anyway, so that's game number 2. Game number 3, which is commonly known as like Disney's Magical Quest 3, officially the full title of Disney's Magical Quest 3 starring Mickey and Donald, because that's the game. Because that's the name that it got released under like GBA later on. Again, commonly known as like Disney's Magical Quest 3. This game did not come out in the U.S. Originally. This was a Japanese only game, for a long time until the GBA version came out years later. The game came out fairly shortly after the first game. Got released in Japan in December of 1995, so a little bit over a year over the last one. I'm not sure exactly why this game didn't come out in the West. For older games like this, you really can't find. You usually cannot find concrete reasons. If I had to guess, I'd say probably because it was, I think it was because maybe in 1996 by the time the game came out to North America and the Super NES was already started to go out at that point. So they probably decided to just limit it. You just localize it in Japan. People may not realize. Side note: Disney's just as popular in Japan as it is in the West. But Disney's a huge property, a huge property like Japan. So it's I think the Japanese Disney World is the biggest. Is either the biggest, the most well visited Disney theme parks around the world. Yeah. So, so Disney. So it makes sense. It makes sense that they would release a third game. So. So again, like I said before, this game originally was Japan only. Because the first two games were very popular, and because the game doesn't feature a lot of text, this is one of the games that was very quickly translated as soon as emulation started, the 90s. So, the game was available to play patched in English for a very long time. That's how I played this game. So, I had no experience. I had no experience with any of the three games in the series, by the way, before the podcast. Joe, if I remember correctly, had played the first game as well, too, in the past.
Yep. And I had also played the second, and
but not this one.
I dabbled in this one. I think I played through the first level, but I never went beyond that before.
Okay, all right. So again, Pete again is causing trouble again. Joe, you want to cover the story for this one?
Yeah, so basically Donald's triplets, geez, they're not his triplets, they're his nephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, basically discover this book, and this book sucks them in, and they are sucked into Storyland, and that is where Mickey and Donald have to go to save the, nephews from King Pete.
Yes.
And this one was really fun, and I wish I could have played co-op because I watched some gameplay and the co-op looks amazing. But Mickey and Donald actually play off of each other, which we'll get into, but I really like that. Yes,
that is one of the huge differences that this game has. You have the ability to play with Mickey Mickey or Donald, but unlike the last game, there's actually differences between them this time. So, not so much their base, their base forms, they play very similar, but the outfits are very different. The four outfits you get in this game, they play very different. If Mickey's wearing it as opposed to Donald, which is a huge difference that this game has.
I say it's a huge difference with the first costume. After that, the other three are kind of very similar, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, you can argue about that, but but still, the idea itself is solid.
Right.
So, other differences this game has. So, there's now cartridge save like this.
Yes.
Like this game pack. Batteries finally got to the batteries finally dropped to the dropped to the point where it's able to able to throw them and everything. So, other differences. There's a playing card award system in this game, kind of similar to, a little bit similar to how the end stage extra life mini games work in Mario 2 and Mario 3.
Yep.
Where it's to find secret doors, scattered throughout the stages, you can find bonus rooms. If you pick a playing card correctly and correct that room, you earn an award. So it could be an extra life, could be power up, et cetera, et cetera. So, that's cool. So, and then the last difference this game has, there's one extra stage. The game's a hair longer, so that's seven stages as opposed to 6 stages the first two games. So those are the differences that this game has. So anyway, as Joe mentioned, the outfit differences do make a huge difference in this game. So Joe, you want to cover the outfits?
Yeah, so the first costume that you get, Mickey is a knight. He gets knight armor. He's got a shield and a punching glove. And you can hit in all sort of different directions with it. But with the armor, it makes it that you sink in water.
Yes.
And that is important because Donald gets a wooden barrel as his armor and a metal bowl for a helmet, which, by the way, the graphics on this, they do a really good job of animating this stuff.
Yes,
and he uses a hammer to be able to attack, which is pretty cool. And the plus side is he can float when he touches water. So guess what? This is where the co-op really comes in. You can use Donald as a flotation in the barrel and jump on top of him to get across the water with Mickey while he's in his knight costume. Fantastic. I love that they not only integrated the co-op, but it actually, it's a mechanic in the game. So that was pretty cool. Then you have the second costume, which is a lumberjack climbing gear. Both characters use a rope to catch enemies, throw them, and, all that stuff. The only difference between that costume with them is Mickey lashes the rope in a straight lateral direction, where Donald can throw it up. So there's that.
Yes. The powers and abilities for this are pretty much the same thing as the last game. So.
Yeah. And then the third costume is the magician costume. And Mickey basically throws magic birds. And Donald can use a magic lamp that summons a genie hand that can shoot magic and serve as a platform so that Mickey can step up on it. So, yeah, there are differences for the characters, but I think the first one's really the only big one. And I think that's the one that is integrated more than the others. And I wish they would have kept with that theme with the first power-up. I think the game would have been more interesting if it relied on that second player. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mickey's spells can also be used by finding secret areas that can avoid traps too.
Yes, that was the other thing I forgot to mention.
So if you're playing a solo, no, it's fine. I just want to mention it because I'm if you're playing solo, you want to be Mickey, Mickey in this form because that's to be much more useful. Donald, however, in 2-player mode, that platform you can do is critical. Just like with the with the knight costume. It's a huge difference in 2-player mode. So I agree with you totally, Joe. The outfit ability. While not taking as far as I would have liked them to take it, there's still significant differences and improvements in this game as far as that goes. So
yeah, one thing that I wanted to mention that I didn't like was a change in this game. I think this is reverted backwards, and that would be that when you lose all your lives in this game, you go back to the beginning.
Yes, okay, all right. So.
And, I mean, I get it. You know what I mean? You still gotta have some sort of difficulty there, but I also, I should have played the Famicom version of Magical Quest 2, just because I wonder if maybe they kept that mechanic in there from the first game, and just kind of carried it over, in Japan, but when they did Circus Mystery, they changed it for us US market. I don't know.
Well, I think it's the same, both games.
Okay.
For both games, I think the different. I think the reasons for that change this one is they're trying to make the game a bit more difficult.
Right.
And B, this was actually done by different people in Capcom. Capcom opposed the first 2 games.
Okay.
This game was done by the same team that also did Mega Man Soccer, the Super NES, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So they may not have realized how that worked or worked. They thought it was better to do it that way or whatever.
Yeah.
So if I had to guess, that's why. So no, I agree with you definitely. There's a great definitely its downside. However, I think out of all three of the games, this one's my favorite. Like the game still, all three games are filled, filled with like humor and charm and cuteness. I think the music's one maybe the best like out of the three games. The graphic engine works very good. Like it's very good cute graphic engine. The the improvements to player mode in this game, as well as the costumes, really make this game, I think, a little bit above the other games. Even in solo mode, it's like the outfit changes really matter most two-player mode, but even solo mode, the fact that Mickey and Donald actually do different things to their costumes this time around is a huge improvement, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I think overall. So I think overall this game is the best out of the three. But again, the same thing I said before applies. If you enjoy the first two games, enjoy this game as well too. So yeah.
And my only gripe with this game really is that I felt like a lot of the levels felt very similar to the first two games. So that kind of like, it was kind of like, all right, been here, done that. Like, really, it was the costumes that changed the experience more than anything else. But that being said, still a fantastic game. If you like the first two games, you should definitely be playing this one.
Yeah, definitely.
And just so you know, like the ending, like you actually at the end of this thing get a true wrap up of the whole trilogy. And it's actually pretty satisfying, which we'll talk about when we get there.
Yeah, definitely. So the GBA version of this game is the first time, this game got released worldwide. So, it came out in 2003 in Japan, 2004 in North America, 2005 in Europe. They added some, the only difference in this game, the version of the game, they added some cooperative mini games. They have the GBA link cable. You can play those two-player, you can play the mini games with somebody else, and you can also play in cooperative mode as well with somebody via the cable as well too. So the game did not review quite as well as the past game, probably because of the fact that it was tried and true, the same formula. The Metacritic average, of this game is a very depressing 58%, which I think is too low, but. I think so. Really, the comments for this game were just the same as the past two games. I think people. I think the reason the bad review scores, the review scores are based upon the GBA re-release. And GBA port did suffer the same restrictions that the other two versions of the game had, and the fact that smaller screen, et cetera, harder to see things, that kind of stuff. So. I could not find any reviews of this game in Japan when it came out originally in 1995. So I think those reviews would have been much better. But I think that's the reason. Why you get the low scores.
Yeah.
OneUp.com, for example, gave it a C+. GameSpot gave it a 3 out of 5. Et cetera, et cetera. So, because the GBA version of the game does suffer the same restrictions as the other two ports of the game, unfortunately. So. Don't let those bad review scores hurt you. Like I said before, I think this is my favorite, favorite game of the trilogy.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that ending? That you teased with a bit of a joke.
So after you defeat King Pete, you of course leave Storyland. So you get out of the book. You've rescued Huey, Dewey, and Louie. You would think, okay, that's the end, but you got Minnie and Daisy, and they're standing over you, and you've been sleeping this entire time. And what I love about this is it all ties in to, was this a dream or was it reality? They make subtle hints with the Blue Fairy that, they were going to transport them to the real world, but she kind of stopped herself and said the outside world. So little nods to where, they kind of make you think whether, this was really happening or whether this was a dream, which is pretty cool. And man, Pete, what a journey for this guy. So he's the wizard, he's the baron, then he's the king, and now he's a good guy and he's the protector of everything. And actually has a definitive end in the trilogy, which is amazing that they carried this all the way through all three games and just kind of put a little bow on it, and just left it. And that was
Yeah,
that.
I agree with totally. Yeah, it's an awesome ending. It's a very good twist. I also see, I also was reminded about Kingdom Hearts 2 as well. Also with this, like like shades, like Pete's character change and whatnot.
Yes.
Because because Kingdom Hearts 2, you're also being cooperative with Pete in some areas as well too. So, but yeah, very surprising ending. Very good ending. I thought definitely. I thought definitely like for sure. So it's like all in all, these three games are kind of easy as far as platforms go, but they are very well designed, very cute, like very like cartoonish games. So if you if you're a fan of like Disney at all, or like like easier platform games for kids and whatnot, these games I think still hold up pretty well today.
Agreed, 100%.
eBay, not really not really like any cheats or anything to be found in this game. Pricing again, if this is going to be like all over the board because because the fact that because the game did not get a Western release, there are available repo carts and also repo carts and boxes that people have made up, so you can actually play the game on a US Super NES if you want to as well. So altogether, there were 12 copies of this game currently listed on eBay, with copies of the game recently sold. By the way, just to clarify, I think I made this clear before, but just to make sure, the eBay pricing for all three games is only Super NES versions of the game. The GBA versions of the game are totally different.
Right.
Usually you can find the GBA version of the games the games are a bit cheaper on average. So if you want to get the game for cheap, the GBA version might be the way to go. But original Japanese Famicom, Super Famicom cards of this game are pretty expensive. The game probably did not get a very like big release in Japan because it was late release. So cards of the game. There was only one copy of the game that sold recently in cart only for $45. So. CIB examples of this game sold anywhere from $97 to $129. So, if you want a repo cart, those sold anywhere from $22 to $7. With repo and box, a sale was selling them for $36. So, not bad pricing for like a Japanese only game.
No, not bad at all. So I have Bai on my phone, so I was going to look up Yahoo Japanese auctions to see if I could find related content there. But believe it or not, I put in Magical Quest 3 and didn't get a single hit. So
yeah, there's not many copies available on eBay either, so that doesn't surprise me.
Actually, nope. They didn't even. They just show the GBA. How bad is that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, looks like limited release in Japan, which we've all seen in past episodes. When that's happens, those prices go up quite a bit. So,
yep,
doesn't surprise.
Yep, for sure. So, at least the game finally came out in the West, like the GBA. So I will give them credit for that at least. So, So I assume, final wrap up thought. Disney looks like they have all the rights to the game these days because Disney did release the GBA version of the GBA remakes of all three games. I assume they still do. So it would be nice to see all three of these games released, released again today in one one collection, or maybe a Capcom Disney collection or something else like that. So
I'd totally be down for a Capcom Disney collection for sure.
Yeah. So because the only Capcom Disney game that got released recently, which I think is the only one. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Joe. Was DuckTales, because DuckTales is super popular.
So they released Lion King, Aladdin, and Jungle Book. So
was that a limited run thing?
So Lion King and Aladdin were done by Virgin. Same with Jungle Book, but and it was originally released with just Lion King and Aladdin, and it had the Genesis version, the Game Boy versions, and the Game Gear versions, which makes sense because those were all Virgin Interactive. Well, they recently kind of added DLC by adding the Jungle Book and all the different versions of that game, but also they added in the Capcom Aladdin version.
Okay.
So
all right.
that's been the most recent, as far as I know. That's the most recent Disney / Capcom that was re-released. But
Sure. Okay.
yeah, Capcom's got. Oh man, I would love to see like Quackshot and like Land of Illusion. These 3 games. I'm trying to think of other. Mickey Mania was Capcom, I believe, right?
No, Mickey Mania was actually developed by a company called Traverse Tales and published by Sony ImageSoft.
Oh, okay.
So totally, like,
Completely different.
Totally not Capcom.
But yeah, I mean, Capcom did some great work with the Disney license
Yes.
when they had it, and I would definitely love to see those in a collection for sure. But like you stated, that's more than likely Disney's say whether they get released or not, and I don't see them really doing that. Prime example would be, not only the DuckTales game, they did Disney Afternoon. That was the other one I was thinking of. The Disney Afternoon collection. That came with Tailspin, DuckTales, DuckTales 2, Rescue Rangers 1 and 2, and Darkwing Duck. So, that I think is actually the most recent release. And, they're all the Nintendo games, and they're still fun. But, something like the Cowabunga collection that's coming out, where it's like through all the different consoles on one disc, would just be great.
Yeah, the Cowabunga collection actually is leaving out a game. There was a PC only Teenage Turtles game called like Manhattan Adventures that probably nobody's ever played, but
I also heard it's not that great, just saying.
Yeah, so so it's like the Cowabunga collection might include all the console turtle games. So console and handheld if you want to be picky, but yeah. So I agree. Like most of these, I think all the Disney games, the Disney Capcom games, like are very good. So another collection easily released for like modern platforms and whatnot, would be like a fun thing to have for sure.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
but anyway, so that's the games for you. So we appreciate you always listening to us as always. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, concerns, etc., you can reach me on Facebook, or you can also direct messaging, or we also have a group on Facebook as well too. Or you can also email me if you want to. The email is the SNES podcast at yahoo.com. Joe, where can they reach you at?
I have a very public Facebook. You can find me there, but also I'm on Twitter at JOESUX30.
Right. So before we announce the next game coming up, I do want to do a couple of quick programming notes here toward the end. One, we've had another. So this is more of a back end thing. Most people probably won't notice, but maybe some folks did. We have changed editors again, so we now have Mike editing the podcast for us. So
thanks, Mike.
So yes, thank you. So yes, I don't want to say too much about what happened here in the podcast, but I do want to thank Brad for all the work, for all the hard work and dedication he put into editing the podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
For the last 30 episodes I want to say at this point, probably. So it has been a while.
Yeah.
So but yeah, Mike actually took over editing duties with the last episode, Rendering Ranger R2. So I'm sorry, actually True Lies, the first episode that was the episode they edited for us. So two episodes ago at this point. So I'm talking to Mike right now currently about a longer term commitment to keep him editing on the podcast. So thank you again for that. Two, we're coming up with we're rapidly approaching the 200 episode of the podcast. So, as teased before, we are going to do a special for that episode. We decided to go ahead and just do another game draft episode like we did for episode 100 because Joe wasn't here for that first one. And I was like, we're going to get some people on the podcast who did not take part in the first one. So we have some tentative co-hosts lined up right now. As we get closer to that episode and things get more finalized, I'll start mentioning names and other things like that as well too. If we keep our current release schedule, I believe we're going to be recording episode 200, probably in October sometime, if I'm doing the math correctly.
Yeah, that's how I figured it.
So stay tuned for that. So. Yeah. And again, as always, thank you for listening to the podcast. I very much appreciate it. Joe, as always, thank you again for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, next time we're covering another Japanese only game. This was a this game was suggested by a friend of the podcast. It's a Japanese only game called Astro Go-Go, which is a racing game that looks very weird and very unique. So
yeah, definitely.
I'm not spending time in this game yet, Joe. Like, do you?
I have not tried this yet, and I have never seen this game in my life, so it should be fun.
Well, like I said before, like it was Japan only, so
right.
Which is a good reason for even nowadays we we don't hear a lot about those stuck in Japan games unless it gets really like a cult classic. So,
yeah, very true.
But anyways, as always, we appreciate you listening to the podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Be well. We'll catch you again next time. Later.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Super power.